Welcome, everyone. Some of you might be expecting someone in orange clothes or, long flowing beard. And when they come here to my talks, some people get a little unsettled. They see this guy, dressed in a jeans and a t-shirt. He doesn't have any of the hallmarks of the sages and the saints that we are all used to. And it's good to be unsettled. It's good to question. It's good to be in a space where your conditionings are challenged. So you think X and you are given Y. So whatever conditioning that you have come with is no longer applicable. And so today is a long weekend. There is F1 going on, lots of other events in the city, but you all are here. And there's a reason you are here. You could be at the F1, you could be at any of these events. You are here because the usual way of living with your career, maybe with your relationship, with your desires and fears is no longer something which you think is enough. There's more to life. You feel there is a calling. And by being here, you're acknowledging that calling. But as you wake up on this path, there'll be a lot of challenges because people around you are sleeping. They're still sleepwalking. The entire society is sleepwalking. So when you wake up and you start becoming aware of this identity, aware of your desires, your fears, the whole complex of ego, then you're going against the flow of the entire society. And then the society will start questioning you. You'll have people, your friends, your relatives, your neighbors, who would want you to come back. They'll say, "What's wrong with you?" They'll say, "Why are you going on a path which is for the crazies?" The reason is the entire structure of society is built on identity. And the moment you start questioning that, people become uncomfortable. And that's why it's an important question to ask. So there was a study done in 1950 by a guy called Solomon Ash. It's a very interesting study. What he did was he created two cards. One card had a line and the other card had three lines, A, B, and C. And one of the options matched with the first line. And it was pretty obvious, like the first line was this big, and the three options were like this, this, and this. So it was pretty obvious which is the correct answer. He put all these people in a room, gave them the cards, but unknowing to the people, there was just one participant and rest of the people were actors. So what he did, he asked them to choose a correct answer, but the actors all gave the wrong answer. So when they were sitting in a group, they said, "What's the right answer?" If the right answer is A, everyone said C. Now, when they did this trial with different settings, surprisingly, 33% of the people gave the wrong answer when the group gave the wrong answer. So the people knew it's a wrong answer. They could see it. They could see the lines. They could see this is the correct answer. But they went against their perception to confirm with the group. They were asked later on, "Why did you do it?" They said we didn't want to upset the group. We want to fit in with the group. We didn't want to feel like an outsider. We didn't want any conflict. Now, the reason this study is so important and why I'm bringing this up is the moment you start doing things with the group or the society does not do, you will face a lot of resistance. Now, in that study, there were 25% people who gave the right answer no matter what the other people said. So they stuck to what they saw, they stuck to what was right, and they said, this is the correct answer, no matter what anyone else says. And I think spiritual seekers who walk the path are those 25% people. They are not conformist. They are trying to see the truth. And even if someone else comes up and says, no, this is not correct, they have the courage to stand up and say, no, this is right. Now, how does identity play in all these things? So, let's first start. How does identity build up? So, when you're born, of course, you have no name, you even don't know yourself. And then your parents pick you up, they give you a name, and that name becomes your identity. So after many years, they keep calling you with that name, say David, and you're like, David, David, David. And one day you'll respond to that name. And that's the day that name becomes yours. David is my name. And then you go to school. What does school do? Our education does not, in true sense, impart knowledge. It generally is a mechanism to rank you, to sort you. So it will create this ranking hierarchy. This is a better student. This is not a good student. She's clever. She's good at maths. He's difficult. And that identity is reinforced throughout the school and college. And when you become a teenager, again, you have this fear of not belonging. So you want to do things to fit in. That again creates another layer of identity. And then finally, you start working. You're in a corporate job or your own business. And finally, that job becomes your identity. And you have seen when you meet new people, they'll ask your name. And the second question is, what do you do? Or you identify yourself with that position. I am so and so. I work as so and so. So over the years, we have built this different layers of identity on top of another. But the question is, which of this identity is mine? My face was not mine. I was born with this face. It's all genetics from my parents, from my mom and dad. Of course, my name is not mine. What is mine in all of this? So let's do a small exercise. If you just close your eyes and say your name mentally, just say your name mentally maybe 3 times. And whenever you say your name, an image will pop up in your head, a face, a thought. And you would say, this is me. But is it really me? Or is it an identity which has been manufactured by culture, by society, by those around me? And this is a very important question to ask, because if what I think myself to be is something which has been manufactured, which is not mine, then who am I? What if my parents gave me a different name instead of whatever your name is? Imagine they thought of a different name at that time, and that would become your name. You would be happy with that name. And we invest so much in that name, we are ready to defend it. We get angry if someone says anything against that identity or the name. What if it's just constructed? And all of you are wearing a label, and the label says, "This is not my original face." And this is a very powerful Zen teaching or a quote. What is your original face? It's a koan which they use. If my face is a result of genetics and my identity is a result of what my parents and society created, what is my original face? This question has been asked by mystics and seekers across the ages. I want to come to a very simple and subtle differentiation. I know my identity. The moment I say I know my identity, there has to be a knower who knows this. It's a very subtle point. So I know my thoughts. Henceforth, I'm not my thoughts. I know them. They arise in me. And so there is a knower. There is something which knows the thoughts. There's something which knows an identity. So identity forms on top of this knowingness. I know I am. And on top of that forms an identity. And then later on, we can trade that identity. We can become a spiritual person. We can become a material person. We can become a billionaire. We can have different identities. And we do evolve. As we evolve, we change our identities. But that's just an upgrade. What I'm pointing here is something which knows all these different identities. So you were young, you know that you were young at one time, then you were in college, then you started working, and maybe at one time you were material oriented, and now you're very spiritual. Who knows all these identities? There's someone in you which knows all these identities in and out. I'm using the word someone or something because it's very abstract. That's someone or that's something which can see through and say, I am this in this moment. I am spiritual. Or I am angry. Or I want money. Is there a distinction between the person who wants and the thought of wanting? If you pay attention, there is a gap. Now, that knowingness is called by many different ways, many different names by teachers. Some call it consciousness, some call it awareness, some call it God, some call it witness, some call it the Buddha mind. But once you start being in that knowingness, in that beingness, you can see these identities arising and you can create a distance. You need not identify with it. So, for example, I'm going in the traffic and someone honks or cuts me through. Immediately, there is anger, there is resentment. And then I remember this resentment is part of this identity. And I can either identify or watch it or see it as something arising in me rather than me. It's a very fine distinction, it's a very subtle distinction. But if you can do that, that's where freedom lies, because then you are free at that moment to either engage, identify, or let it go. So, till then, you're not free. You're absolutely not free because you are or you will run with the mind. So, someone cuts you off, you get angry, and then you will react in a pattern, whatever that pattern might be. A pattern can be a violence of anger, irritation, doesn't matter. There's no choice. But what if I can see this, the whole process, this identity forming, my need to defend it, my need to justify it? I see it coming up. And at that moment, I can either choose to identify and say, this is what I am, or I can drop it. So now I have a choice. And this is the choice where freedom lives. This is where you can slowly deconstruct this identity. So you're not creating a new identity, you're not upgrading your identity. That will not free you. So when we are trying to understand this me and the prison, we have to also understand how the dysfunctional society creates this prison. Because you are a part of a system, you cannot take yourself out of it. And one thing, what seekers do, so you are trying to find the light, you're trying to walk the path, you're trying to get enlightened, awakened, become better, become evolved, spiritual. Of course, you're doing it for yourself. All of you are doing it for yourself. But any step that you take towards light also affects humanity. Humanity becomes better every time one of you takes a step towards understanding your mind, your desires, yourself. And in that way, your endeavor of walking the path is not solitary, though you might not realize it. It affects humanity as a whole. And this path comes with carrying your cross. So when you will start questioning this entire identity, society will push back, people will push back. Your friends will question you because you're falling out of the system. And this will also create a lot of loneliness. This will also create a lot of conflict in you because there are two loops running now. One loop says, I understand wealth and fame and desires are not the path to truth and contentment. So you're falling off from it. But there's another loop playing. Now, that loop is not completely out of this material thing. It still wants approval. It still wants love. It still wants financial security. It still wants meaningful connection. It is still hurt when it sees someone do things which they don't like or don't approve. So you have these two loops going on. And this is what is carrying the cross. Many people think once you come on the path, everything will be beautiful and you'll be lost in bliss and nirvana. Yes, with time, but the initial transformation requires a lot of hard work and heartbreak, which no one talks about. It's like the caterpillar becoming a butterfly. So, how a caterpillar becomes a butterfly is it goes into the pupal stage and it does not transform. Everything is broken down, and you can read it up. Each and every cell of the caterpillar breaks down, it becomes like a goo, liquid thing. And then, after the complete breakdown of that structure from that liquid gel, a butterfly is born slowly. So it's deconstruction. The complete caterpillar is deconstructed. And that's not an easy thing. Of course, what comes out of that is very beautiful, a butterfly. So you will have to go through that deconstruction process. And the ego will resist. So there are two forces here. One is the external force of the society. What about the internal forces? What about my wants and desires? What about this identity, my ego, if nothing matters? What will happen if this ego dies? What will I be? So my question was, and this bothered me a lot, was if I get enlightened, if the I disappears, what's the point? I'm not going to be there to enjoy it. Of course, if I go off, there's no one here who will benefit from that enlightenment. And this used to bother me a lot. And this was again a subtle strategy of the ego. So these are the internal forces which you'll encounter as you try to deconstruct this identity. What will it become if I have, no place to stand on? So as I said, you will go through the deconstruction phase. You'll go through the darkness. But what comes out on the other side is incredible. You will know what true freedom is for the first time. Not freedom of doing what you want. I'm not talking about a freedom where we all are free in that sense. We all live in a developed world, in a democracy where you can do whatever you want, you can buy whatever you want. But that's not freedom. These are just patterns running, conditioning runnings in our heads. Our insecurities, our desires, our need for approval. What if all of that can end? And truly I can be without any particular identity. So the price of infinity is the sacrifice of your personality. So if you want infinite, you'll have to let go of the individual. So are you ready to make that trade? Losing your individuality is a big thing. So when I lose my individuality, what about my desires? What about my visions, my dreams, my wants for love and relationships? These are all tied to my identity of who I am. And your identity might be different. You might want enlightenment or you might want $1 million. Is the same mechanism working internally? What happens if that drops off? Or am I ready to give it up? So these are the questions you will have to ask yourself on the path. So if you choose to take the next step, what you will find is your true nature, which is vast, which is infinite, which transcends the personality, which transcends this identity. And I won't use the word eternal because eternal implies time. It is beyond time itself. And that's what I encountered when I let go of this identity.